Well, I don't think we always choose where we're going to build and where, you know, growth happens. You know, look at the Middle East. In a way, it's not an ideal place to start building, but we have to because for economic reasons for it. So you just adopt to those situations, I think. So it's not, the question isn't really, do we need to go into extreme environments to solve habitation issues? I think we're already there, right? And you can see as well in our practice, we've been building in very different environments, from anything to Kazakhstan or Abu Dhabi, extremely different environments, where we each time try to adapt and adopt our architecture into those different parameters. So in the long term, of course, if you look at people like Elon Musk, you know, they're really thinking about, yes, our planet is going to be overpopulated and we will have to move somewhere else. And he's thinking about moving to Mars with 1 million people in 100 years. The main reason why he does that is not because of, I think, overpopulation, but he thinks there might be some massive disaster. Then at the end of the day, we'll have to, we need a backup. There will be, you know, we need a backup to Earth, and that might be Mars. So yeah, I think, you know, the work being done on Mars and the Moon has been quite valuable for ourselves, because we've learned quite a few things to then take back to Earth habitation as well, right? And I think there's a lot been, people talks about the fact that, oh, suddenly we all now can have our own printers. We can all make our own objects, right? Somehow we would like to question that, because yes, we might all have our own 3D printers at home soon, or we could do, but think about other technologies that have been before. Think about, for example, normal printers, right? When the first dot matrix printers came out, a lot of people said, well, soon we won't have any books. We'll just be able to print our own books at home. And of course, we're not doing that anymore. We've never actually done that. And I also don't own a printer anymore at home. What I do is I might send off and self-publish something. So I do think there is, you know, that making yourself, I don't really believe in it. I think there will be making more locally, you know, or having more control over the making part, but I don't always think that it will be you yourself doing it. So taking that further to architecture, do I believe that people will start making their own houses suddenly? Well, I don't think, probably not. It will be maybe more democratic, will be smaller setups that can start printing parts or producing parts, but will it be a revolution where everybody can build their own stuff? Probably not, because I think one thing we always forget is there is also a strong design part to it, and I think design is really the enabler of this technology. And you know, I have to admit it, we're not all designers, you know? So I think there is a strong, that design thinking still has to be there, which we don't always have now.
Overpopulation and the urban growth, followed by lack of resources or the environmental crisis, which are basically the challenges of the 21st century, I think that they are the parameters that they raise the question on where and how we will be building in the future. But most important, how we will be transforming our future cities. So what I foresee that the future urban model is the centralized, productive and social city. A city where the technologies of information and communication, as well as of course the internet, will become the core of these new urban environments, a core to the urban behaviors that they will allow, on the one hand, the top-down decisions to be more informed, and at the same time they will be able to enhance more bottom-up processes. So I think that the future city is an ecosystem where the infrastructures, such as for example energy or water or waste, they are being treated in a decentralized local way. It is an ecosystem where the public space is becoming productive space. It is an ecosystem where citizen-based services allow access to technologies, so that places such as, for example, Fab Labs or maker spaces or co-working spaces, they are in a way boosting new city business models and economic models. I also foresee a city where our built environment is a more responsive environment, where buildings are following more biological and natural processes rather than following the processes of mere construction. I think what it is important for architects, urbanists, designers and other disciplines related with the urban environment is that we need to start changing our languages. We need to start discussing more among us and trying to interchange knowledge and expertise. We have been using traditional terms for urban environments that are not valid anymore. We need to start talking about responsive environments, about active public spaces, about eco-neighborhoods, about do-it-yourself processes, about Internet of Things or Internet of Energies. And we should start in a way transforming processes and languages on the construction and the architectural sector. For example, we have been talking and working with the idea of the 2D drawings. I think now the 2D drawings are being replaced by interfaces. Instead of assembling, we should start thinking about 4D printing. Instead of the traditional construction cranes, what we are introducing is new natural swarm robots that they work on site with local and natural materials. So the whole language of architecture, urban planning and design is changing in this kind of future scenario.
Yeah, well, I think that the fundamental role of a Fab Labs is exactly that. I mean, it's changing the culture of what it means to live in a city. If you try to understand the last couple hundred years and how we live today, is a result of a production system. No? The highly industrialized model that we actually took it into an extreme in which we are fabricating very far away from where we live. And then we have created jobs around the way we actually have access to things. So we have to go and study a career that probably we don't like. Then we get a job that probably we hate. And then we buy things that we actually don't need, that has been made by someone else and has been produced dozens of miles away from where you live. You buy that thing, you turn it into trash, and that's it. It's a linear model in which there is no actually value between you, or the relationship between you and how things are made. The role of a Fab Labs is basically connected to trying to turn this linear model into a circular model, or probably a spiral model, in which our relationships between how things are, thought, and the idea of how things should be made and how they should be produced are closer. So Fab Labs are are injecting people and citizenship. I think a new philosophy of how things should be made and how we should use technology that is not only a commodity to be consumed, but actually technology could be a tool to improve people's life. Yeah, what I see is a multi-scalar kind of system of systems in which you can think about the 3D printer in your house, in which you can actually solve very local or very domestic kind of problems, or you can make some kind of domestic appliances. Then you have the neighborhood scale Fab Lab, in which you can prototype and produce hyper locally. Then you have like a middle scale flexible factories in the city level. And then you will still have some things that are being produced, let's say, in probably hundreds of millions quantities, not like screws. You don't need to make in your house a screw. So you have to use still like a different multi-scalar system in which you have complementary fabrication facilities or infrastructure. No? So I think that actually what Fab Labs are going to help it, what they are going to help is to reindustrialize cities. It means that it will create a demand of a different type of industry that can produce things on demand, that can produce things in not thousands, millions, or hundreds of thousands, but actually probably in a few dozens or a few hundreds. And that's probably the biggest shift that we will foresee in the development. I think is connected also with the idea of the industry 4.0, the hyper-connected industry with supply chains, with innovation coming from citizens in Fab Labs, and with a very local impact, but at the same time connected to this global kind of inventory of raw materials, knowledge, supply chains, manufacturing infrastructure in the entire planet.
When we talk about the future of cities, so often we've been talking about technology. And I think technology is just an enabler. At the center of a city, you have citizens, you have the people. And this means really redesigning the role of technology for the cities of the future. Redesigning technology means that we have to give the possibility to citizens to be actors in this process. We like to think about empowering citizens in two different ways. One is enabling them to be able to be producers, to be more effective in bringing about new solutions that use technology to existing problems. And the other one is to enable them to be smart users of technology. So citizens need to be able to take advantage of all of this innovation that is taking place in this new space. For when we talk about empowering citizens, we can only think about that from a collaborative perspective. Citizens, they organize sometimes in large organizations, and that's pretty much the legacy. New organizations are born small, and eventually they grow or not. The dynamic city where innovation is at the center of the citizen activity means that we need more spaces also for collaboration. People need to find each other from different backgrounds in order to come about to solutions. We like to think that citizens need to be active in designing what are the problems that need to be addressed. And we like to think also that citizens need to get together in order to solve their problems. So whether you have a technology background, an architectural background, or a design or communications or business background, you are looking at problems from very different perspectives. And this brings about more holistic or more targeted solutions. And either way, they are much more effective when you're trying to address your peers. This means new ways of interpreting space. This means understanding that we need a more open relationship to space, because co-working spaces probably are just the starting point of a new way of relating between what is the innovation activity and the actual public space.
Yeah, I think that in all the discussion about the productive city and in all the discussion about smart cities, we are making some mistakes, and part of those mistakes have to do with the fact that we put a lot of emphasis on outcomes and not so much on processes. So I think that it's important to think about not just the outcomes of these productive cities, but also about the social processes that will be leading to a new model, that goes beyond Taylorism and Fordism, So I think that there's obviously a third revolution underlying all these discussions, but I think it's important to reconcile what we expect from these productive cities and how this is going to be perceived. So it's not just a discussion about the what, it's also the discussion about the how. And I think that focusing on these new economic processes leading to what we expect from these productive cities is critical. Well, I think that in terms of new business models, what's really important is to understand that unlike most people would tend to think, these business models are not always leaders, but sometimes are followers of what citizens are demanding. So I think that something that is really interesting is how they are providing responses to previous needs that have been identified by citizens. So I think that they definitely need to be technologically based, but also socially inclusive, environmentally sound, and also being able to reconcile private interest and collective goals. I think that it's important to recognize that the smart city is a new response, but a new response to some challenges that we already know. So for instance, the opportunity to provide people with information just in time on their profile of consumption of some resources, the opportunity to show that technology is not always there to provide an answer unless it is within the appropriate institutional setup and within the appropriate incentives, unless we understand that innovation is not invention, that innovation is about creating the conditions to bring something in that is actually new. And unless we understand all these things, smart cities can be just a fashionable term rather than an actual reality. So I think it's important to emphasize on this.